Welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute devotional podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse. Broadcast from the ever-beautiful Sharonville, Ohio, on the sunny side of Cincinnati. Welcome back to Daily Dose Radio. Come on in, sit down. We got the fire all stoked up. We're ready to go. It's warm in here. It's toasty, and we've got some wonderful Bible study cooked up for you today. Psalm 138, verses 6 and 7. You're going to like these. So we're looking at 6 and 7, and these go with verse 3 so nicely. I hope that you'll stay with me as we explore these two verses. And let me just begin by reading them for you, for my translation. For the Lord is exalted, yet he sees the lowly, but the haughty he knows from a distance. If I walk in the way of trouble, you will revive me from the wrath of my enemies. You will stretch out your hand and save me by your right hand. That's verses 6 and 7. You see some Davidic themes here throughout this psalm, and here, especially in this particular passage, you have the lowly and the haughty back to back. They're contrasted. David loves that in his psalms. He loves to talk about the lowly versus the haughty, or the prideful, or the rich versus the poor. So we have that here. It's a Davidic theme. We have trouble always in the Davidic psalters. We have the word enemies here in this passage. Actually, my enemies, and that particular word and that particular spelling happens 28 times in the Psalms, and most of it in the Davidic Psalter. Also, here in verse 7, stretch out your hand and save me by your right hand, takes us back again to Psalm 137. The Lord, by a strong hand and a stretched out arm, he does this work. And so we have the stretched out again here in Psalm 138, which reminds us of what we just read. The Lord did a work with Israel. Now, instead of Israel receiving the benefit of the stretched out arm and the strong hand, we have this mighty God doing something for the individual. So stretching it out and doing a work for the person in prayer. Also, you'll notice how nicely these two verses go with verse 3. So if we took out verses 4 and 5, that prophetic piece about what's going to happen in the future, 4 and 5 really explain to us the prayer of verse 3, make me bold with strength in my soul, because the kings of the earth, well, they're not there yet. They're going to be, but for right now I need strength. But let's just read verse 3 and then read on in verses 6 and 7. I think you'll see a wonderful prayer is comprised here. On the day I call, then you answer me. You make me bold with strength in my soul. For the Lord is exalted, yet he sees the lowly, but the haughty he knows from a distance. If I walk in the way of trouble, you will revive me from the wrath of my enemies. You will stretch out your hand and save me by your right hand. You hear this wonderful prayer now, strength he's asking for. I know the Lord sees the lowly, and that's me. Remember, never forget Psalm 34. This poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and delivered him out of all his trouble. The Lord wants to help you. He wants to deliver you. Will you call on him today? You see, the psalmist is making this prayer for us, and if we put it all together, how wonderful it is. The Lord is exalted, yet he's not so high that he can't look and see the lowly. As a matter of fact, he delights to see those who humble themselves before him. He so delights in that he ignores the haughty, who is prideful, and he sees them from a distance. He knows who they are, but the lowly, well, he sees them and he hears them. And here's what he does. If the lowly man walks in the way of trouble, if trouble finds him, or if he's off the path, well, the Lord comes around and he does a reviving work. That's a term that we saw quite a bit in Psalm 119. As a matter of fact, that theme of revival for the individual is all over Psalm 119. Here we have it again in Psalm 138. You will revive me from the wrath of my enemies. See, the enemy comes. That's again for David, that's the kings of the earth and all the haughty. They're there. They're wanting to stop the man of faith. You will stretch out your hand and save me by your right hand. Call on him today and ask him to save you, because you have an enemy. It's not just the kings of the earth, but it happens to be someone who wants to destroy the image of God, who wants to bring you into hell, who wants to capture you forever. Break his power by commissioning the forgiveness of the cross of Christ for your life. Would you do that today? Join me again tomorrow. We're going to look at verse 8 on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. I'm David Smith. The music today has been performed by the Bluegrass Experiment. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Daily Dose Radio.